Good morning and welcome back to the channel. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It's completely free. And make sure you give the video a thumbs up as it helps with the algorithm. Right, let's get back to Brendan Rodgers this morning. Let's talk about Brendan. He's been talking about his time at Liverpool and the fact that he missed out on the chance to get Virgil Van Dijk for about 8 or 9 million. He's also been talking about the Scottish media. He's been talking about the Scottish media and said that they're trying to create a situation at Celtic that does not exist as far as he concerns. But what did he say about Virgil van Dijk and Celtic? He said, the Celtic manager went on to say that that was probably one of his biggest regrets in his football management career so far. The Dutch defender Virgil van Dijk was brought into Celtic by Neil Lennon, and he really shone through the area of Ronnie Deila, and he was standout. He was a standout during that time. And let's face it, without Ronnie Deila, we wouldn't have got that second 9 in a row. A second 9 in a row that we didn't have to cheat for. And a second 9 in a row that will go down in history as the only team in Scotland to do two. That's right, 2 9 in a rows. But anyway, Virgil van Dijk was eventually sold to Southampton for £13 million. Rodgers has since admitted that he passed up the opportunity to buy him for Liverpool. He said, look, he says, when I was at Liverpool, I had the chance to get Virgil van Dijk for about 8 or 9 million. Eventually, Liverpool paid 70 odd million for him. I think it was a big mistake by me. He said, my attitude about Scottish football at the time was, look, he might be able to play 90 minutes in Scotland and he might be able to shine in Scotland, but can he do it at the higher level for Liverpool in the English Premiership? His attitude towards Scottish football has obviously changed since then. He says, look, there's not many complaining about Virgil van Dijk now, and he's been absolutely phenomenal for Liverpool. The Celtic boss has been talking about the Scottish media. Also, he says that people are trying to drive a wedge between him and the board and his second return. He says, but Rodgers has been honest about the transfer market since he came in, and he's made it clear last week. He's also made it clear that Celtic is already actively seeking out transfer options for this Christmas window, the winter window, and next summer. They're thinking that far ahead. And obviously one of those players that we need to replace will be Joe Hart, as he has not entered into any contract talks because it's widely known that he wants to go to America with his family to see out the rest of his football career. But there's another player that, and you need to remember Joe Hart is 36. We need to replace him as a goalkeeper going forward. Greg Taylor, he needs a bit of competition also. So we need at least 2 quality players in the next transfer window. Brendan knows this. We need someone that can give Greg Taylor a run for his money because let's face it, Bernabei is so far out the scene just now. It wasn't even included in the Champions League squad, which was probably a bit devastating for the player. Rodgers know that the January window will be interesting, especially with the financial results that Celtic have just posted. The fact that we're sitting with so much money in the bank, it is a case that we need to be building this Christmas so that we're ready for the Champions League next season. We need to make sure that we go into the summer and we get as many players in as early as possible so that they have a chance to gel together as a team before we go into the Champions League next season. If we win the league, we're being a bit presumptuous here, but we're all taking it that Celtic will win the league this season. Talking about exceptional seasons and exceptional players, Matt O'Reilly. It looks like Matt O'Reilly could be in call for a lineup to the senior squad in Denmark. You've got to remember, Matt O'Reilly is also in continued talks with Celtic at this moment to get an improved contract because Celtic do fear of more bids coming in for him. You remember that Matt O'Reilly was subject to a 10 million bid during the summer transfer window. Celtic are expecting more bids to come in, hence the reason that they want to get Matt on a new contract, a new improved contract. New improved compared to the one that he signed just not so long ago, but he is that important and they think that he can grow in stature as a player to a 25 to 30 million pound player. Matt O'Reilly is on the verge of being promoted to the Danish senior squad, which will be fantastic for the player for the upcoming European qualifiers in October. So according to reports that are coming out of Denmark, Denmark are seriously considering promoting Matt O'Reilly to the senior squad for the international break in October. He's been impressive under Brendan Rodgers, and he's still in talks over his new deal. In my opinion, it's absolutely paramount that we get Matt O'Reilly signed up on a new deal. We make sure that he's wanted and loved by the club, because we need to be building players around the likes of Matt O'Reilly for the next few seasons to make sure that we can keep progressing in Europe, because I think he will be one player that will improve every time he plays in Europe. And also the fact that we need to be making sure that we are at the top of the table looking down on the Rangers. Brendan has challenged Matt to add more goals to his game, and he's done that pretty successfully this season so far. He clearly enjoys working under the new manager. Remember all the things that he said about the difference between working the last manager and the new manager and working under Brendan. The fact that Brendan does like to have a chat with them on the training pitch, talk about things, talk about how they're feeling, and it's a bit different from the way the manager was before. Signing a new contract with the likes of Kyogo, Dyson, Lil Abada. Hopefully Rio Hatate signs a new contract, but there is big speculation about Rio Hatate being eyed up by the one and only ex-Celtic manager Ange. So will Matt O'Reilly sign a new contract? I think he will, personally. He's been an absolute standout this season so far, getting a couple of goals. I expect him to be into double figures this season. In fact, I'm going to say I expect Matt O'Reilly to score at least 15 goals this season. Tell me what you think about that in the comments section. Now let's get back to the bit about Brendan Rodgers talking about the media, and the media saying that there's basically a split between him and the board. And we all know that Brendan wanted more players in during the window, more experienced players. He did say that going into the last week of the window. Kind of feel as if I'm repeating myself on that, but he did say that. He did say he wanted experience, and he didn't really get that experience. But what he did say, he says, any manager that goes into the window feels that they could do it a little bit better. Any manager says that. Every manager thinks that they could have done a little bit better come the end of the window, no matter who they are. We aim at Celtic to improve the quality within the squad. It doesn't mean that I'm not happy with the club or the squad. I'm pretty sure that people will look at that and focus and try to drive a wedge between myself and the board, which there isn't. Whatever stories tried to get created, most of them out there are pretty much false. At the minute, I'm happy with the squad. We have to up the standards in the squad. We have to up the standards on the pitch. That is my job as manager. Rodgers is basically spot on, and even to that extent that big Chris Sutton has been talking about one Celtic player that he says will only get better and better under the current manager Brendan Rodgers at Celtic. Chris Sutton says, look, Celtic pulled off the steal of the century. Celtic have not stolen a player like this since they got Henrik Larsson for £650,000 back in the day. Getting Dyson Maeda for just over £1 million has been phenomenal. He was like the Duracell bunny at the weekend, says Chris Sutton, in the 3-0 win. He was all over every blade of grass. Even the fact that Celtic went down to 10 men, they weren't made to pay for the fact that Joe had an early red card, and that took James Forrest off the pitch going forward. Maeda, obviously, he was absolutely breathless all over the pitch. Sutton said, look, there's similarities between the former Marinos player and his old teammate, Didier Gat. But Didier Gat was one time by Martin O'Neill. Martin O'Neill says, look, if this guy had the finishing touch, if Didier Gat was to be sold, he would be sold for 30 million. Let's just hope a lot of people point out to the signing that Didier Gat only cost Celtic 50 grand back in the day. Yes, £50,000. And he says, look, Dyson Maeda reminds him of a Gat. And anyone that's from the channel that's obviously not old enough to remember that, I'd ask you to go back and watch football under the Martin O'Neill era and watch Didier Gat on the wing, because Didier Gat had some pace, and he's basically Dyson Maeda is the modern day Didier Gat. Can Celtic keep a hold of him? He's obviously been pivotal over the last couple of seasons to Celtic's success. There's about 3 or 4 signings that have come in that have been similar to the success, but what a bit of business, Chris Sutton says, what a bit of business getting him for such a low amount of money. Tell me your thoughts about Dyson Midas, because there's a lot of love going about from him just now. He is upped his game. There's a lot of players that seem to have upped their game under the new manager, and it's just hope that we can keep them the next transfer window and hope that we can build on the squad. So on that note, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up and have a fantastic day, Celtic fans all around the world.